Since 2003, this is the Sports Source, East Tennessee's #1 sports talk show.
Presented by Pipe Wrench, and by Junk Be Gone, and by the Garza Law Firm.
With your host, John Pennington. The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome into the Sports Source. It's going to be a do-or-die game on WATE 6 today at 2 o'clock Eastern. Tennessee loses last night at Omaha, or in Omaha, lost to Texas A&M. And that means they got to win today and they got to win tomorrow if they're going to bring home a national championship. We'll be talking all about the game. We'll be doing the first half of the show. Is all going to be talking about what happened last night and what's coming up today and what it all means for Tony Vitello and rumors about Tony Vitello, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We got some football, we got some basketball, we got a lot to come, recruiting in this one as well, and then, of course, our predictions. Here, I didn't mention, in the Junk Be Gone studios. So, Junk Be Gone, it's funny I would mention them because this first segment of our show brought to you by Junk Be Gone. Need to clear out your basement or attic? Is your storage shed full of stuff you don't use? Heck, is the shed itself outlived its usefulness? Maybe like me, you have a fire pit that is falling apart and needs to be hauled away. Well, call Junk Be Gone, folks. You can load it up, or they can load it up, but they'll haul your junk away in a 15-yard driveway dumpster, and man, that holds a lot of junk. JunkBeGone.biz is where you need to go. Simple, affordable, and it's a good family-owned, locally-owned company. JunkBeGone.biz to help with your own cleaning project here in the days, weeks, and months ahead. Junk Be Gone. All right. Let's welcome in our panel for today. We have right here Josh Ward. Beside him, Vince Ferrara. Jimmy Himes back with us. Will West right there. Gentlemen, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Let's take a look. The Lions score from last night. It was a rough game one, as I mentioned. Vols fall 9-5. Pitching let them down early, and their defense went back on the schneid. Thought they were off the schneid. They're back on the schneid. Not a great showing, obviously, and one of the interesting things when you look at the overall plan of this, you see the losing pitcher there was Stamos. Go back and take a look at this next graphic. Tony Vitello decided to go with two guys. He's been doing this for a while now, and you see it goes back all season, but to see the last time, the last three times he's used Stamos to open and then Causey to come in and handle those middle innings, hasn't gone well. 8 runs in 4 innings yesterday, 6 runs in 2 innings against Florida State, 5 runs in 6 innings against Evansville. And it doesn't look bad because Causey did a pretty good job for those other games down through there. And this is just the last 8 or 9 that they've done this way. But Stamos has had his troubles. You have to go all the way back to the Missouri game to find a game when he didn't at least give up 1 run. So you look at Texas A&M, Schlossnagle goes with their ace on the mound. Vitello, game 1, didn't go with his ace on the mound. Vince Ferrara, congratulations. I'm going to have you second guess. You're part of the broadcast team over there, but I'm going to have you second guess. Should he have gone with his ace as opposed to the duo last night?
No, I don't think so. Tony Vitello is about routine, and he's about what's worked. And they were 9-1 with Stamos starting and Causey going right after him. You know, when they gave up the 3 runs, you mentioned they're against Evansville, they were unearned runs because there were some defensive issues that popped up there as well. The big thing with Stamos is not giving up a run, because sometimes you give up a solo home run if you're attacking the zone. That's the cost of doing business sometimes. It's holding them down and getting them at least one time through the lineup and sometimes a second time through the lineup. Then you get to Causey. When they've gone to Causey too early, that's when he is not quite as sharp. So that's happened the last 2 games. So I don't think off of last game you change what you do completely, because then you change routine for Beam and everybody else. So game 2 is the critical one. They've looked at series that way, and they look at this the same way as well. It either saves your season, or had they won last night, you win a championship. So he was much, much better last week. So there's really was no reason to change. It's just they went back to playing like they did against Florida State overall.
It's a good breakdown. Does everyone agree with it?
Yeah, I also think Tennessee didn't want to be here to have a bullpen game on for their Friday night pitcher, right? A.J. Russell, they expected to be in the rotation. I don't think you want to be here, but if you look at the next 2 games, A&M has one starter, and then they run bullpen games out, right? So this is something that just kind of happens in modern baseball, even though for those of us that are of a certain age, we look at this and say, that's a really bad decision to run a bullpen game out there. But it worked for Tennessee until about four games ago, or 4 series ago. It was working pretty automatically for Tennessee, but the bottom's fallen out. Big thing that I noticed what Vince said, the last 3 games, 5 unearned runs in those last 3 games. That's not going to get it done during a bullpen game.
I don't know how Drew Beam works on X amount of days of rest, but I would have gone with Drew Beam to start. He was so effective in the most recent game against North Carolina, and Stamos and Causey, they didn't get it done in the previous. In the World Series, it's been a disaster, right? Because they've got 6 innings pitched, 14 hits, 13 runs, 11 earned runs. I just feel more comfortable with going with Drew Beam, who was so effective against North Carolina.
Josh?
I would have stuck with the routine because that's what they've done. It's not a typical 3-game series because of the stakes, but it is a 3-game series as they are used to playing through the conference schedule. The problem is they don't have an obvious answer for Friday and Saturday where you're guaranteed to go out there and have success. So if Drew Beam pitches in Game 1 last night and they lose, then it's danger mode heading into Game 2. It's almost panic mode. So I think part of the thought is if Game 1 doesn't go right, we have Drew Beam that we can count on to get us to the winner-take-all Game 3, and that's the position they're in. Obviously, they prefer to win Game 1 and have Drew Beam be the guy that can close it out, go 2-0 and win. But I would have stuck with the routine because of what it worked, how it had worked. If you decide I'm going to go back to Causey as the starter and not Stamos, that I would understand, but I would have not have thrown Beam in Game 1.
But the reason why they use Causey in that role is because he wasn't as comfortable as a starter and wasn't as effective. And that's the same thing with Chris Cortez, one of the better relievers for A&M. He started some games, but he wasn't as good in that role. Right. He's been dominant when he comes into the ball game, and that's probably, we'll get to it, probably what they're going to do in Game 2. So it's just guys in certain roles are at their best. You use the word panic. That sends a panic message to your team if you're all of a sudden in the championship series changing things that have worked. It may have not have been perfect, but you found ways to get it done. So Causey at times has been one of their better pitchers.
I don't see that as being panic. I see it as being effective.
Well, the other side, though, is you have Xander Sechrest then, who's already going to have to pitch on Monday if necessary on short rest. Do you pitch him on shorter rest, or do you let these guys just get an extra day of rest? They already had 6 days rest to be able to pitch yesterday. So you don't have other options besides Beam and Sechrest outside of going with that bullpen game, and so they kind of had to put it somewhere. Why not on Saturday?
Let's move on and talk about the defense because especially in the infield, again, you had issues last night. 3 errors, they all wound up hurting you. We talked last week, so the defense is going to be fine, and through the week it was. Yesterday it had one of those glitch games again. Do we feel confident enough they're going to win 2 games to win a national championship? Do we feel confident enough that you're going to get 2 good games of defense moving forward, or are you cautiously looking at this thing, thinking these guys can throw one the wrong direction at any moment? Where are you on their defense at the moment?
I don't think it's definitely not good. It is definitely a problem. I do think that if they lose, it probably won't be because they have unearned runs and errors and things like that. It'll be because Texas A&M just smokes them with that deep pitching staff that they have.
You had that's another issue. You had a ton of guys on base last night that you couldn't get in.
Yeah.
So, all right, defense, guys left on base. What other issues did you see last night that's correctable?
Yeah, well, and I would say because we've seen them once bounce back from a bad defensive showing against Florida State, the same ballpark, I think that should create some confidence. From a bounce-back standpoint, Christian Moore, Kavares Tears have to bounce back at the plate, which they know. If they're going over and leaving runners in scoring position again, then Texas A&M is probably going to win the series in 2. If those guys bounce back and play better, and Drew Beam is what they expect him to be, that's, I think, what gives them a shot at Game 3.
I thought last night wasn't about what Tennessee didn't do. It was about what Texas A&M did. You have to give them credit. They were better than Tennessee last night. They had an incredible game plan from a pitching standpoint. Winner, their pitching coach, has been fantastic. They're all through Omaha. And so they got Tennessee behind in counts. Tennessee likes to work counts, put pitches on opposing pitchers. They had Tennessee in 0-2 holes all night long and then just hit them with low stuff so that if they do make contact to fight out of it, disproportionately get ground balls.
I see that a little differently. I thought Tennessee's lack of discipline at the plate was awful. They had 17 strikeouts. They had at least 4 or 5 times where they swung at a ball in the dirt for a strikeout. They took 4 or 5 third strikes And as Josh mentioned, two of your best hitters, Moore and Tiers, were 0 for 10 with 5 strikeouts. I thought it's about as bad as Tennessee's been at the plate with their discipline, with swinging at bad pitches and taking good pitches.
Well, execution with 2 strikes to me was big. Texas A&M was great at that. They had 7 hits with 2 strikes. 7, including 5 RBI, 4 RBI hits with 2 strikes. Tennessee wasn't able to execute those put-away pitches. It's something Beam had issues with until the last game, and he was fantastic at it. And Tennessee could not execute those. And A&M was just putting the ball in play. Tennessee also 2 of 13 with runners in scoring position, 2 of 11 with 2 outs. They've also been really good in those areas. They've been as good as anyone in the tournament, and they weren't able to execute in those areas either.
One other thing I'll throw out here, though, last night, and of course, you look at the message boards, you look at social media, the big story, there were 2. One, why didn't you start Drew Beam? The other big story was, well, you choked. You just got there on the big stage and you choked. Texas A&M hasn't lost in this tournament. They're number 3 in the nation for a reason.
They're a terrific team.
Yes, it's like if you're in the Super Bowl and you lose, it's not a choke. It's the Super Bowl. There's a pretty good team across from you over there. It happens. This is the World Series final series. You're against a great team. I don't think choke had anything to do with last night at all.
I agree. I thought it was more about what A&M did. I thought they had a great
Yeah,
strategy.
give them credit. Yep.
And now let's see how Tennessee adjusts to that strategy. Also, does the home plate umpire let you have that right below the knee, right at the knee? Is that going to be a strike today? It was last night. Will it be today?
Well, it'll be a different umpire, so you have to ride that wave. So you just never know.
A&M put the ball in the right spot when they needed to. There were several balls that weren't hit that hard. They were hit to the right place. Yeah. Tennessee didn't have that, but there was no choke job by Tennessee. There was a better job done by the Aggies.
Agreed. All right. I do want to mention something here before we go to break, and that is something last week we had, I think it was YouTube TV. The grid guide said that we were off at 12 o'clock because something is like professional lacrosse was on ABC. So everybody who DVR'd us via YouTube TV, their show cut off. So I'm going to give you a quick note here. There are tons of cable, satellite streaming providers, DirecTV, Comcast, YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. They get their program information from different sources. It's not coming out of Channel 6, which annoys the heck out of Channel 6 and me, which means that it might be right on Comcast and wrong on YouTube TV, or vice versa. So my lesson to you, my question to you, ignore the guides. We're going to be here live every Sunday from 11 to 12:30 unless I announce a change a week prior. Otherwise, we're 90 minutes every Sunday at 11 o'clock right here. So set your DVR by the station and time if you can. Some allow you to do this. You just go and set it for 90 minutes at 11 a.m. on Channel 6 every Sunday. Don't click Sports Source. Set the time and the place. See if that works for you. And then if your DVR does cut you out or you miss part of the show live, you can watch the full show at sportsource.tv or on our YouTube channel every Sunday afternoon. So thank you for that. Sorry for any inconvenience for those of you who had the show cut off last week. Trust me, it ticks me off more than it does you. All right, when we come back, let's get you ready for Game 2. That's coming up at 2 o'clock today. We'll break down the pitching matchup and more. We've talked about Drew Beam. Let's follow up on Drew Beam next. Come on back. And welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by A.G. Hines Company. Nudura insulated concrete forms. They're being used all over the world right now to build long-lasting, energy-efficient, cost-efficient homes and structures. A.G. Hines Company carries them. I was looking at them this week, as a matter of fact. Gordon Hines and his team, which includes his family, they can tell you all about them. It's a tremendous, as a matter of fact, a few years ago there was a shot, I think we showed it to you once, there was a shot where a hurricane went through Palm Beach or somewhere else. There's only one building that's left standing, and all the siding's gone and everything else, but what's standing are the Nudura concrete forms. This stuff is strong, hold up to a hurricane. Get down to A.G. Hines Company and ask them about it if you've got a building project coming up. It's some interesting stuff. aghines.com to learn more. All right, I want to do the poll question for today as well, and I think this would have been a bigger hit for Vitello if the outcome had been different last night. But the question is, who's your favorite Vol coach of the past 25 years? And I gave you some chances, give you some options. You're not going to see the little orange lines move, but the numbers will change. Barnes, Fulmer, with a goose egg, Heupel, Pearl, the leader, Bruce Pearl, unbelievable. Ahead of Pat Summitt, Tony Vitello, 10%. The love for this town's love for Bruce Pearl, a guy who burned them, it's amazing to me. But Go ahead, keep showing me how wrong I am. That QR code there, you use it with your smartphone, just click it, and tell us which of those 6 coaches was your favorite over the last 25 years. And we'll have a little segment on Vitello's popularity coming up next, as a matter of fact. But go ahead, vote right there, or you can go to sportsource.tv, click on the polls, and vote there. We appreciate you playing and showing me how goofy I am with what I think is going to happen and it not happening. All right, Vince, quickly. We talked about Drew Beam in that last segment. He'll be on the mound today. Tell me about the matchup with Texas A&M's guys.
Well, certainly you need Drew Beam from last game where he was fantastic. And the big thing with Drew Beam is the second or third time through the order. And he was much better at that last time. And adjusting to understanding what the opponent is adjusting to. He struggled his previous 5 starts before that. But if you get that Drew Beam from the North Carolina game, Tennessee is in great shape, and they need that with as many guys as they used out of the pen last night. Now, in terms of the matchup for A&M, they're in a tough spot. The pitching advantage is Tennessee's favor in this game. There's no doubt. The last guy that started besides their Lampkin, who is their number 2, and they're saving him, at least from what we hear, for Game 3. The last pitcher to start other than that is Tanner Jones, and he started against Grambling in the very first NCAA tournament game. But he's been up and down, 6.33 earned run average. Weston Moss is another option. What they're going to do is they're going to start one guy, kind of like a Stamos, to get him through one time through the order, and then they bring in Cortez in his comfort zone. He's the power arm that can throw 100. That's what you got to do. You got to get to their starter, their first guy through, and then see how it plays out after that.
Keys for Tennessee to win this game. They have to win it to keep the national championship hopes alive. What are the keys?
Don't fall behind in the count the way that they did yesterday. I think is a big portion of it. And so I think for Tennessee, if they're going to throw that many first pitch strikes, swing, man. Put the ball in play. And I think that's something that you have to do is be a little bit more aggressive at the plate. They've been measured. It's worked for them well. You're at a different level right now taking on Texas A&M.
Can't go 2 for 13 runners in scoring position, which is part of that. Can't strike out 17 times. And I do not think that Moore and Tiers are going to go 0 for 10 with 5 strikeouts. I expect them to be much more productive.
Moore hasn't had an 0 for 5 days since March, so that's not likely to happen again.
Yeah, get off to a good start. If Tennessee's able to put pressure with Beam on the mound on Texas A&M, that's, I think, a huge advantage for the Vols. They're going to have opportunities. Guys are going to get on base. You got to send them home. You got to score.
I mean, not to be Mr. Obvious, but obviously you want to cut back on the errors too. I mean, you don't want to give them extra at bats. You certainly don't want to give them runs. You got to clean that up. And for the most part, they have in this tournament. It's been 2 games where it really bit them. It's the 2 games they lost. One interesting thing, my view of this series, is it changed? Yeah, I mean, your back's against the wall, but if you told me I could have any team in the country in a 0-1 hole and they got to win their next 2 games, I would probably take Tennessee. So I'm not really panicking over this. I don't think fans should be panicked over this. I mean, I may be eating crow at 6 o'clock tonight when the game ends, since it's now they can't end the game in 4 hours. But to me, I'm not really panicked about this. I think Tennessee's the better team. I thought Texas A&M had their ace last night. You weren't ready for it. My guess is the next 2 games are going to look like Tennessee again.
We just
we'll
watched
play
this.
the odds.
We just watched this in the SEC tournament, right? Like Tennessee just lost game 1, worked their way all the way through the SEC tournament. So why would you think now Tennessee can't win 2 games when then they had to win? How many games was it, Vince, in the SEC tournament they had to get through? 4. I mean, yeah. So you can win 2, and you beat this exact Texas A&M team in an elimination game as well once you'd already taken 1 loss. So this is absolutely doable.
And you haven't lost a 3-game series since Alabama, which was what? Was that the first SEC series?
First SEC series, yeah. Well,
Okay.
and 3 times they've lost the first game of a series and come back and won. Georgia, Auburn, and Kentucky. 2 of those are awfully good. So it's happened before. In a way, this it would be indicative of the kind of season Tennessee's had. Yeah. It's not the 22-year where they're just rolling people, where they've had some challenges, but they've overcome them. I'm fairly calm too. Like this. Baseball is day to day. It's not like football where if your run defense struggles, well, you're going to stink with run defense all year.
Right.
It's every day is different pitchers, different dynamics.
Well, let me ask you though. Do you think if Tennessee, if it's close, is everybody available? Like, do you have, if you're down 1 run, do you run Seacrest out there and say we'll figure Monday out if we have to?
You have to.
Yeah.
You have
to stay alive, right?
Yeah.
Another positive.
Your bullpen's good enough without having to run him out there.
Well, they can.
What I'm getting at is I'm doing whatever it takes to win today, and I'll worry about.
Right.
I'll do whatever it takes today. I'll worry about Monday.
Yeah.
I agree with that, but your bullpen is
Right.
good enough to where you don't have to
You
use
shouldn't have to
Secret.
use it.
Correct.
They didn't pitch Nate Snead, and it was a
Yes.
positive that Tennessee did some things offensively late in that game, and they forced their closer Aschenbach to have to pitch 46 pitches. He may not be available for game 2. That is a positive. So Tennessee needs to get the early start, like Josh mentioned, and then avoid having them to maybe try to run Aschenbach back, for a short stint or something.
One quick thing, and I was going to drop it, but I'm putting it back in here. Pressure busts pipes. All right, this is the most pressure-filled game that the Vols have been in ever. Mm-hmm. So, does that give them a little case of the yips? I would normally think they're used to this kind of thing. I'm not worried about it, but it is the World Series Finals. They know it is the World Series Finals. They can talk about, it's just another game, all they want. They know the importance of this. So I do wonder if there's going to be any kind of difference in their mental makeup. And Tony Vitello said after the game, we weren't going to dive into this because none of us were clear what he meant by it. But after the game, he talked about it was a little more emotional yesterday when things didn't go right. I don't think he meant they were weeping. I think maybe they were just more frustrated.
That's what I would go with.
But it does make you wonder, okay, is that a sign of they know this is the World Series Finals?
It could be, but I also think that they've got enough veterans on this team. They've been there before. A lot of these guys were on the World Series team a year ago. I don't think that would creep in. I do, and I have seen them bounce back from some not so good performances. You mentioned the Vanderbilt loss in the start of the SEC tournament. Florida State, come back and win that game. So I think they'll be okay from that perspective.
I do get a little concerned in seeing the difference. One thing that I thought was a good thing for this Tennessee team is that everything was business. This is just business. It's a business trip. They handled everything like business. We stay on schedule with our pitchers. We're not going to deviate from what we do because of the moment and overreact to it. For him to say last night on ESPN, Tony Vitello, that they revved up into the red too far and they had to dial it back down, especially when I see how calm Texas A&M was, how businesslike Texas A&M was, that's a little bit concerning.
All right, we got to catch a break. And thanks for continuing to vote. You've shifted that pretty quickly. Pat Summitt now in the lead. Tony Vitello, the second most popular coach at Tennessee over the last 25 years, more popular than Pearl, that's about right. More popular than Barnes, more popular than Heupel, and Fulmer has a vote. Fulmer more popular than Heupel. There you go. All right, when we come back, where would a national title put Tony Vitello in the pantheon of fans' favorite coaches? There we go. Come on back on the Sports Source. All right, welcome back in. This segment brought to you by Parkside Cabin Rentals. The heat dome has descended across the eastern part of the country. I'm sure you could feel it. I was out in my backyard the other night, and I thought it was going to burst into flame. There's still one place to go, though, where you can cool down in East Tennessee. It's the Great Smoky Mountains. You got mountain breezes. You got the shade of the trees. You got the cool water of creeks and streams. It's pathetic. It's just perfect. I said pathetic. Perfect. So make reservations for a cabin of your own at parksidecabinrentals.com. They have more choices and layouts, and you can see them all on the website. More layouts than anybody else in the Smokies. Visit their website. You will be amazed at the different types of venues available to you. Whether you want a place for 2 or a place for 22, they've got it. Parkside Cabin Rentals. All right, take a look at this graphic. Lots of information there about Tony Vitello and what he has done at Tennessee in the 2020s. It's this decade he's dominating. Just tremendous numbers all the way up and down. We'll leave that on the screen for a second. But my question is, what does a national title do? Especially now, if you win it now, you're going to have one of these 2-game comebacks where that's going to make it more exciting, more spectacular. If he wins a national title, what does that do for Tony Vitello? I know we've got the poll up, but that's a portion of the audience. In terms of all nation, where does Tony Vitello fit in the pantheon of favorite coaches?
He is, if he wins it all, he climbs up not just one notch, but 2, in my opinion. And there's a variety of reasons for it, but a key reason is Tennessee has not won a national championship in any sport since 2009. They've won 3 all-sports trophies in a row, and people are like, yeah, but you hadn't won a national championship. Okay, he puts that to rest. He's also widely popular with the way he handles things, with his confidence, with his players, with the whole program. They're expanding things. It's hard for me to say, okay, top 5. I don't know about putting him there. But He would be one of the most popular all-time at Tennessee if he can bring a national championship back, which has avoided Tennessee in 15 years.
It would be the first national championship Tennessee's had in one of their big five sports in the social media era. And that matters because you have an entire, like a lot of things are about demographics. Millennials were children the last time. That's the largest demographics group in America. They were children the last time Tennessee won a national title, even when Pat Summitt was able to do it. And so that was 16 years ago. Since we've had social media and there's so much community that's been created through social media, good and bad, Tennessee has not won a national title. So because of that, this fan base is starved. And when you're able to feed someone who's starved, like they're going to appreciate you a lot more than if you're already well fed and someone cooks you a meal. And that's what Tony Vitello would be doing.
Even if it's a non-revenue sport.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. I think if Tennessee had won championships in men's basketball or football, I don't know that a championship in one of the non-revenue sports moves the needle as much, but it's the starving thing that you guys both brought up, and I think that means we're wanting anything. Now, I think it was women's track in 2009 that won it. Okay, no offense, those great athletes, coaching staff, congratulations, but no one's following that.
Who remembers it also?
Right. Yeah.
That's track.
And it was just indoor, right?
Yeah.
It was the indoor national title, not the, you know what I mean, not
full
outdoor.
day. So I do think that baseball, while it's not, again, the football crowd is bigger than anything else. You got more people that'll be bandwagon to Tennessee football than they will basketball or women's basketball or anything else. But I do think the situation and the way he's turned it around and his personality.
Yes.
That's a big part of it too. He's not a grump. He's got the outgoing personality. It's a little bit of the Pearl thing in terms of the salesman. I think that all plays a part in it too. So if he wins a national title, I'm with you guys. I think he jumps way, way up there.
What would be interesting if Tennessee had a 15,000-seat baseball stadium? Could they fill it? If they had
Definitely
10,
not midweek.
If they had, but if they had 10,000, there's no question it would fill it in my mind.
I think what happens is they'd sell the tickets, and then it'd be half empty. It'd be like Yankee Stadium right now, right? Corporate buys and things like that would buy up the tickets where the fan couldn't go.
Well, the interesting thing is, you look at Tennessee football, and even Heupel's first year, you had games there were 60,000 people in there. Now you can tell me that, well, the tickets sold were whatever. You had 50, 60,000 people sitting in there. Men's basketball, it's pretty much always 15. Even when Buzz Peterson was here and they had the curtains up, you were one of the top 10 teams in the country every year for attendance. So, yeah, it looked bad because you had a 25,000-seat arena, but 15,000 is more than most. Would baseball, if football when it's down gets 50, if basketball when it's down gets 15, what if baseball takes a dip? Would it get 10 or 15? I don't know that it's been established to that point yet, but it's getting there.
I did public address for Lady Ball softball when Monica Cappa was there, and just a couple of years, the year after that. And I remember when they first started making the World Series, they're putting up bleachers in the outfield, up and down the sidelines.
Tyson Park.
And this is after they moved into Sherritt Park or Lee Stadium. But then they kept making it to the College World Series and never broke through the weekly stuff.
Never won it. So
and then it's full, but you don't have to put the stands all over the place and things like that to get extra bodies in there.
All right. Very good. By the way, the countdown continues. We're now only about 2.5 hours away from Game 2 right here on Channel 6. And before that, at 1:30, Reese Van Haften and the crew here at WATE, they're doing a 30-minute preview special to get you ready. They'll be out in Omaha to get you ready for today's game. So just break the knob off right now on your television. Although most of you don't have a knob, so just throw your remote out the window. But keep it right here on Channel 6 for the preview coming up at 1:30 and for the game at 2 o'clock. When we come back right here, Vitello will get a new contract at season's end. He's got big bonuses coming his way. They're rebuilding Lindsey Nelson Stadium for him. So why are there rumors about Texas? Come on back. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Southeast Termite and Pest Control. A friend of mine just noticed this week that he has holes in the underside of his deck railing. The culprit? Carpenter bees. I told him to call Southeast Termite and Pest Control. If mosquitoes have taken over your yard, Southeast Termite and Pest Control. Whatever the pest, these guys can control them. And by control them, I mean kill them. SoutheastTermite.com to learn more. It's a great company. Been around since 1971. Family owned. The Haynes family take a lot of pride in what they do. Get in touch with them this week. SoutheastTermite.com. Southeast Termite and Pest Control. They'll take care of you all over East Tennessee. All right, Tony Vitello will be getting a new deal from Danny White when the season ends. He's already earned a bonus of 32% of his base pay. His base pay is $350,000, so he's getting 32% just for reaching the final series. If he wins, he'll get a 40% bonus off of that. So he's already made $122,000 extra. He could make $140,000 if he wins the national title. Toss in the multi-million-dollar upgrade at Lindsey Nelson Stadium that they've implemented for him, and I'm kind of surprised that I keep seeing his name attached to the Texas job, which, is it open yet?
No.
Yeah, okay. So, but that is the rumor out there. So my question, should Vol fans have anything to worry about here? I would think it would be kind of a snake move if you just had them build a stadium for you and then you left. So I don't think there's reason to worry. Am I wrong?
Well, let me tell you, the Texas deal, the thought on that is that they haven't announced an opening, that they're unhappy with David Pierce, that they are just waiting until, one, the season's over and everybody stops playing, two, a potential candidate that they want is available or turns it down. So they're not going to make a move now, because if they were to release their guy, David Pierce, then that puts pressure on Tony Vitello or maybe somebody else, Maybe they're looking at Josh Linder or somebody else. So they're not going to make that move. At least that's the theory of why that Texas job isn't open. So that being said, I don't think it's happening. I would be stunned if it happens. You just never know with the crazy dollars that might get thrown out. But man, we've heard that in coaching before. They're going to just back up the Brinks truck, and it doesn't end up happening. You mentioned the stadium, what he's invested here. He can win championships here. So if he wins a championship, he's still going to go to Texas. The reports are that he's going to. I don't buy it.
He's the king of the town too. Everybody loves him. To me, there aren't a lot of guys that I could go back and find who asked for improvements to facilities, got them, and then left immediately. That is rare. I don't know that I could come up with one. So I think that's the pretty good sign that he's going to stick around. But then again, it is Tennessee. Bad things happen here. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think this fear made more sense a few years ago when there was talk of what might Texas A&M do, and they ended up hiring Jim Schlossnagle from TCU or LSU. They went out and got Jay Johnson. That worked. They won a national title. But that made more sense because the facility changes hadn't come yet at Tennessee, and Tony Vitello hadn't gotten a big payday where he is now with Tennessee yet. He's going to get a new contract. He's going to get even more money. He's going to be taken care of. They're going to continue building the facilities. Tony Vitello is not leaving Tennessee.
Yeah, when does someone actually back the Brinks truck up and then someone leaves? It doesn't happen. When Jimbo Fisher left Florida State, it's because he ran that thing into the ground and he needed to get while the getting was good. Calipari right now, right? He left because they wanted him gone. Right. He found an out. He got someone to throw a lot of NIL money at him.
Took a smaller deal.
Yes, that's when you see people leave. People never back the Brinks truck up and say, I'm just going to go take this coach. It doesn't happen.
The only one might be Lincoln Riley with USC, but even Brian Kelly to LSU, that was more about I can't win a title at Notre Dame.
Right.
And with Lincoln Riley, he also kind of wanted out from under Bob Stoops, walking onto his practice field, telling him how he's going to do things. Yeah. The original Texas message board post said $3 million a year. If they hand him $3 million, you just have to let him walk. But I don't know that yes, they have boosters in Texas. Are they willing to let baseball become some vanity project and we just want to be good at this, so we're going to throw this money into a non-revenue sport?
Well, especially now.
I believe that.
Right now, I don't know. There's so much turmoil out there, and nobody knows exactly where this thing's going. They think they know where it's going, and it's probably going where more money goes to the bigger sports. So is Texas going to throw that kind of money at a baseball coach when they could just be throwing it back at football or men's basketball? That's the question. But I don't think he's going anywhere. None of us think he's going anywhere, so mark it down. When he leaves, you can make fun of us. When we come back, let's talk Vol recruiting, and we'll show you where ESPN ranks Vol football over the next 3 years. That's one heck of a crystal ball. We'll show you what they say. Come on back. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Madisonville Marine. There are still some great months of boating ahead of us, so if you find yourself wishing you were out on an East Tennessee lake, get down to Madisonville Marine, Highway 411 North in Madisonville. New boats, pre-owned boats, and always great deals and specials on all their boats. Visit madmarine.com to see what I mean. There is no better place to buy a boat. All right, let's remind you of the poll. Let's see where this thing stands. The leader, Pat Summit, 39%, Vitello, 17%, Barnes, 16%, Pearl, 14%, Heupel, 8%, Fulmer, 6%. Keep clicking for us, folks. Keep clicking. We want to see what the poll winds up. Interesting. Well, we'll talk about whether there's surprises when we reveal the answers a little later.
Josh Heupel's going to leave for Texas after seeing those numbers.
After seeing that, he's gone. All right. And Philip Fulmer's going to decide, I got to be AD again to get my numbers up. All right. Tennessee's in the middle of a huge recruiting push right now. Yesterday they landed defensive lineman Charles House from Charlotte. Only a 3-star according to 24/7 Sports, only a 3-star. But he went on official visits to Georgia and Alabama, and he has offers from like 20 different schools. He's a good gig. Because he's with Tennessee, he'll wind up being a 4-star. That's how the system works. But when we look at the overall numbers, take a look here at where 24/7 has everybody ranked right now. Yeah, in the SEC, Alabama 3rd in the nation, LSU 4, Auburn 5, Georgia 6, Oklahoma 8, Texas A&M 9, Tennessee 14th in the nation. Is that good enough for June? Josh.
It's good enough with a week to go into July. It will not be good enough probably a month from now, 6 weeks from now, because they will start to have players that have been visiting the last couple weekends during the month of June make their announcements. And if Tennessee's still in that position, it's probably going to mean that some announcements went the other way. So like a David Sanders Jr., he's a 5-star offensive tackle visiting Ohio State this weekend. He's been at Tennessee several times. He's Tennessee's most important prospect. He'll announce sometime in July or early August. Got to get him. You know, he's the kind of player that you need to get. Now, if he doesn't choose Tennessee, he's going to the Big Ten, most likely, not the SEC. But
still,
you got to beat those teams out for those type players. So right now they're in a good position because of how many guys they've gotten to campus. They have more deals they have to close.
Yeah, and to Josh's point, if they don't add the star power to this class, then that tells you this very important month of June in recruiting, where they had double-digit guys at 25 a couple weekends ago, a big recruiting
highly
weekend.
sought-after guys.
Absolutely, like 6 5-stars. So if they don't get a bump in the rankings and get more star power, it tells you that June month wasn't as impactful with getting guys here on your campus. They got to get some of those guys, but it's okay right now. It's no reason to panic.
I think you want to be in the top 8 or so when all's said and done.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of with both you guys in regard to it's not that important right now. It would be in a few weeks down the road. Here's the thing, too. With Tennessee, with their quarterback situation, when you get a 5-star or a highly rated quarterback, your ratings go up, right?
Yeah.
You may not get one in this class. I know you try to get one every time.
Yeah.
So if you're the 8th ranked class in the country minus a quarterback, I think that's a pretty darn good class.
That's
it
a good
means
point.
you've done a really good job in your other areas.
Let's take a look. This is an interesting deal. ESPN has ranked programs 24 through 26. Now, this is the transfer portal era, so and there are 2 classes from this. The 25 class and 26 aren't even signed yet. So to me, this is just insanely silly. But we'll play along here. They have Tennessee's the 13th best program in the nation over the next 3 years. Now, I would say, is that good enough? And the answer is, yeah, Tennessee should be happy at 13th in the nation, considering where they were. That's pretty good. Look at the company you're keeping. That's good. But 12-team playoff. They don't make a playoff for the next 3 years. And they're at 13th or so. Is that good enough?
Oh, see, well, first of all, I would think they make the playoff because if you're averaging
Well, I'm
out
saying
13th,
they don't, though.
Then no, definitely not.
Okay.
Like, if they don't make the playoff in the next 3 years, that's a disappointment. I'm pretty comfortable saying that with
Okay.
12 spots. But if they average out 13th over the next 3 years, and that includes getting to the playoff, not winning a national title, then I think that's good enough.
Yeah, 13 can be getting to the playoff, and then 8-4 or something like that after that, and then it evens out to about 13. But you got to be pretty much in the top 10 in any ranking to expect them to be in the playoff, because you're probably going to have one of the Power Fives outside of that top 12, and you're going to have the Group of 5 outside of the top 12. So you got to basically be in the top 10. So I think if they get in the playoff and have a down year, I think that will be okay. But overall, without a playoff, no, not good enough.
Yeah, to John's question, if it's not a playoff, it's not good enough. So that's in that they're going to be fine. And I think they're going to be on the cusp of it several years. So it'll be interesting to see if they can get over the hump and get in there.
Here's the interesting thing of perspective. If it were still a 4-team playoff for the next 3 years and they were 13th, would that change your answer? Because a 4-team playoff, that's tougher to get into.
Right.
I'm going to say 13 is good enough even if they don't make a 4-team playoff. 13th isn't good enough if they don't make a 12-team playoff. Because you need to be in that top 12 at some point.
Well, and you're going to have this later, but it also
We're gonna get to
there
it
could be
next.
some teams that you're like, wait a minute, they got in and Tennessee didn't?
Let's do that next, as a matter of fact. When we come back, Memphis predicted to make the college football playoff. Yep, it's out there. What would the meltdown be if Memphis makes the playoff next year before Tennessee gets into it? Let's discuss that next. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Daniel Hood Roofing. Do you need a new roof, or would a rejuvenated roof do the trick for you? Roof rejuvenation can add a decade to your existing roof. Visit danielhoodroofing.com to learn more about what he and his team offer. Line up a free inspection ASAP and go to their website. You'll see a ton of testimonials from people who have used Daniel and his team and had a great experience with it. danielhoodroofing.com. All right, take a look here. This is Bruce Feldman. I jumped ahead. This is your poll answers. All right, so Summit wins, and it's a tie between Rick Barnes and Tony Vitello. Interesting. Followed by...
Not anymore.
There he goes, Tony Vitello back in the lead. Bruce Pearl. The two football coaches are last, including one who won a national championship in Philip Fulmer, who I think the athletic director thing I think hurt his legacy. But Josh Heupel, only 8% when he's turned this program around. I find that fascinating.
Barnes is just tied again.
School? Yeah. Question mark.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right. Now let's take a look at the athletics poll. All right. You're not going to be able to read that, but if you see the number 12, that's Memphis. Bruce Feldman, longtime college football writer, put out his predictions for the playoff this year, and he's got Memphis as the top group of 5 team, which would put them in the playoff. You'll notice there is no Tennessee in there. So my question for the panel here, and by the way, Memphis just landed a 4-star quarterback yesterday. They went 10-3 last year. So that Memphis train, it's rolling. But my question to you guys is, how much of an absolute freak out is there here if Memphis makes a playoff before Tennessee does? You want to talk about Heupel's number being 8%.
Where is Tennessee? Right, if Tennessee was the 12th ranked team and get bumped for the group of 5 team and it's Memphis, then it's an incredible panic. But if Tennessee is 16th with Nico, you're 9-3, you look pretty good. I don't know that
Future
anybody,
looks like you're going to be in a playoff.
Yeah. You can also just rationalize it to yourself that, well, they got in because they were the group of 5 team. What could they do in the SEC?
Right.
I'm just thinking all the things my dad would have said to me back when, you know what I mean? Like, he would have said those kinds of things. So I don't think it will be the end of the world. I will tell you, I don't know what Bruce is looking at if he thinks Mario Cristobal is getting the team into the college football
playoff.
playoff. So,
Yeah, if it's the scenario where Tennessee has a solid season, they go 9-3, they don't make it, and Memphis jumps in, then it would be some bitter rationalization of what's happened here. If Tennessee gets bumped for Memphis, then it's burning rage, and I mean that literally. Furniture burns again.
Yes.
Burning mattresses.
But there would be for sure pressure 2025.
Oh.
You better be making the playoff.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with Heupel. He could be, I think he's probably going to go 9-3 this year. Nico, I think they're going to look better at the end of the year than they do at the start of the year. You're setting it for 2025. But if Memphis makes the playoff and you don't, I think the pressure ramps up on Heupel through no fault of his own, in my opinion.
I think it'd be a freak out like Greg Schiano around here. If Tennessee gets
That's a
bumped
freak out.
by Memphis.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there would be, everybody has to be outraged nowadays over something.
That's true,
right?
yeah.
So they would pick this one. But yeah, and I could see Memphis getting in because when you look at it, they look to be perhaps the best group of 5 team out there. Yeah. They got a quarterback back, a really good receiver. They got a running back transfer from South Carolina. They have a pretty good looking team. So I could actually see them getting there. But if it's at the expense of Tennessee, look out. Level of freak out?
I think it's there because, like Jimmy said, people are freaking out about any and everything they can. Memphis adds to it. I think if James Madison was to get that spot in the playoff, people are like, what are we doing here? Like, what's going on? And it could very well be
I think
someone
Memphis carries
like that.
different. But I think Memphis carries a different level of worry around.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's the same, but it would add with Memphis. But I think people would be upset either way if a group of 5 that's like ranked 40 or something gets in and Tennessee doesn't. You're going to be upset about that.
what if USF gets in and Tennessee is
With
not
Alex
in?
Golesh.
That, I think, would cause a bigger freak out than even Memphis, because I think most people look at Memphis as the state of Mississippi anyway.
Well, I think the key is, we talked about everybody wants to be, Jimmy said everybody wants to be outraged. I think that's it. I think you'll have people that will say, see, it was Golesh instead of Heupel. We kept the wrong guy.
Yeah.
I think there are people who want to go there. They're just, oh, please, give me something to go crazy with. My thumbs, we got to get on Twitter or X or whatever the hell it is. There are people just dying for something. So, yeah, I think if Memphis got it, freak out level is huge. I think if USF got it, that's a great point. Freak out level is big. Yeah.
Baseball teams needs to win the next 2 days.
Speaking of that, we're only about 2 hours until game time. Right at 2 hours, as a matter of fact, right here on Channel 6. You can watch the Vols take on Texas A&M in a do-or-die game. And at 1:30, Reese Van Haften and his team out there in Omaha will be bringing you a preview of that game. But when we come back, would the 85-man football roster limits lead to nightmare situations? Lane Kiffin thinks so, but is this just another case, as we've seen down through the ages, of coaches crying when they really don't need to cry? We'll discuss. Come on back. Welcome back. This segment brought to you by Safety Systems, home automation, security systems, fire and life safety systems for your business. Safety Systems can do all of that, and they do it all very, very well. If you're building a new office, if you're building a new restaurant or a new condo, you're going to need to install all of the fire systems and the safety systems, and you're going to need someone to test those on a regular basis. Safety Systems also does the testing. They not only install them, they can do the testing for you as well. SafetySystems.com. Give VFL J.J. Surlis and his team a call this week. You will be happy, I promise you. All right, Lane Kiffin rang the warning bell about the expected changes coming to a campus near you soon. The roster cap number coming down, which it looks like an 85-man limit. He says that roster cap number coming down, eliminating walk-ons, you're going to see the Florida State situation, meaning their bowl game when everybody was gone and they just got crushed by Georgia. The move now is people have started to not play in bowl games so they don't get hurt to go in the portal. Now, I'm not even saying starters. I'm saying we had players on special teams, backups on defense, offensive teams, like, why are you not playing in the Chick-fil-A Bowl, New Year's Six Bowl? And they're like, we don't want to risk getting hurt covering a kickoff because we're going in the portal. The next step meaning that if all these guys continue to do that and they leave, I don't even have walk-ons to throw out there. All right, that's one side of it. The coaches are screaming about this. But coaches screamed about the scholarship limits being set at 105 back in the 70s. They screamed when they went to 95. They screamed when it went to 85. This is different, though. You're taking walk-ons out. I mean, you're talking, that's a whole lot of guys. But is Kiffin just doing the usual coach setting his hair on fire? Or is this legit? It could be a ruination of college football if you get rid of the walk-ons and you have an 85-man pure cap.
I don't think it's a ruination, but it could certainly hurt bowl games like he's pointing to.
But they're already hurt. Yeah. I mean, the bowl game's already stinks.
Yeah. Well, it's even worse, though, when Florida State gets beat, 60-something or whatever, and a bunch of no-shows. So I think it hurts it even more in the bowl situation.
Yeah, it happened with Florida in a bowl a couple of years ago.
So you'll have some of that. The thing that, and I didn't really know this term until recently, like two-spotting. So what you do is you've got two teams over here in practice, like at Alabama, and then two over here. You're developing players, and a lot of those are walk-ons that eventually get scholarships. That's the biggest argument I heard in Destin, not the bowl opt-outs. It was about trying to build your roster, trying to develop players, and a lot of walk-ons, as we know, become scholarship players. That was a bigger thing that I heard as opposed to the bowl opt-outs.
And the bowl opt-outs, to me, again, that's not a really good argument because the bowls are already taking it in the shorts right now. You got teams that are already, players that are already quitting, and teams that are already getting blown out because their guys aren't playing. Well, Tennessee, Clemson, the Orange Bowl. Clemson was without two of their best defenders out there. Tennessee, didn't have some guys. So anyway, go ahead.
Well, I think what Kiffin is saying is correct, and we would have more Florida State situations. So more of those situations would occur if you have only 85 players on a roster and you have more players that drop out. Obviously, you're going to have more issues. But there's also the chance that revenue share opportunities will keep players in place for the bowl game because it'll be a part of their agreement with the school. I just think the bowl game argument is down the list of reasons that the 85 roster cap, or whatever it would ultimately be, removing players from roster. There are a number of reasons why that's problematic year-round. The bowl game would be lower on the list of reasons to cite.
Yeah, I think having enough guys to practice year-round is a big part of it. I think a bigger argument would be what happens if there's just an unbelievable run of injuries, a rash of injuries at one position.
Yeah, August through November is the bigger deal to me. The history tradition of college athletics is worth citing. The chance to develop and become a scholarship guy in the future, stories that come out of that as well. But the bowl game part is true. I just think it ranks lower on the issues.
And I would say, it's interesting, the point about that I made it there. And it's what we do here, try and set up both sides. lure them in, and then attack them. But no, they did cry when they put a scholarship limit in at 105. They cried at 95. They cried at 85. This is different, though, because you're talking about some teams have 150 guys when you count all the walk-ons. Okay, you're not talking about we're taking 10 scholarship players away. This is taking 85 guys away or 60 guys away that we practice with, that we may need if there's a ton of injuries. This, to me, is serious for the coaches to be crying. I just think Kiffin's crying about he's not making the right argument.
Yeah, I can see that. And I also see where he's coming from with that.
Yeah.
But like I mentioned, the coaches down at the SEC spring meetings and were worried about what you're talking about roster, about having 6 players at a particular position get injured. Now you don't even have a walk-on to step in. That's what they were more worried about. I think they're going to settle it. I don't think it's going to be at 85, by the way. I think they're going to give them like 10 walk-ons, and that's it. They're going to limit your walk-ons, but I don't think they'll do away with all of them.
Oh, boy, what a mess it all is. Yeah. They need to just break off and do their own thing and make their own rules. When we come back, it looks like the NCAA tournament will be expanding. Hurrah! So we'll talk about that. We'll also, there are a lot of people that say, well, you can't have a tournament without the little guys, without the Cinderellas. I think you can. I don't like it. I think you can. I think you will. I'll show you why next. Coming back. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Games and Things. I visited them this week, and their list of fun stuff for your home, man, it's never ending. Card tables, barroom sets, skee ball, air hockey, foosball, pool tables, arcade games, jukeboxes, dartboards, table tennis. I'm running out of breath. Go see for yourself, folks. Games and Things at the corner of Kingston Pike and Lovell Road, because life should be fun, and, man, you're going to walk in there and realize the kind of fun they can bring to your home. OurGameRoom.com. But I say get to the showroom. You will be impressed. Scott and Lisa Mellon do a great job out there. All right, word leaked out this week that it's very likely the NCAA tournament will expand from 68 teams to either 72 or 76. The thought being there will be more play-in games either involving more Power 5 schools, or they will push the smaller schools back into those games and allow the lower part of the conferences, the Power 5 guys, into the tournament to begin with and make the little teams play their way in. Whatever doesn't work for the little guys, what's going to happen? It's funny, I don't think anybody here likes this, right?
No.
Doesn't need to expand. But when you look at Greg Sankey and the other commissioners, they want more money. And that's why I think for all the people who sit around and say, well, you can't have a tournament without the little guy, I think it's going to come to that. Let me put something up on screen. We'll see if these guys agree. Usually when I do this, they don't. I say follow the money. The 14 SEC schools are going to make $32 million from this year's NCAA tournament. It's the number of teams you get in, and then the number of rounds they play. So you get units, and X amount of units equals $32 million. It's paid out over 6 years, but let's just look at it for that 1 year thing. $32 million. That's about $2.2 million per school for one tournament in the SEC. Now, if the SEC and Big Ten if they siphon off the best of the ACC and form a 40-team Super League, like everybody discusses, and they just say, we're doing our own tournament, the TV deal would only have to be $120 million a year, which may sound big to you, but it's not. If it's $120 million a year and there's 40 schools, those schools all just jump their yearly share to $3 million instead of $2.2 million. Now, whether that's good or bad for the sport and the small schools, the big schools would make more money per school by holding their own tournament, which is why I almost guarantee someday they will. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong about your final thesis. Someday they will break off and do this, especially if that's all it's going to take and this is all they're getting paid back out of this. Stephen A. Smith's about to sign a deal making $25 million a year from ESPN. So $120 million for the entire NCAA tournament that would make them more money now than they were making before?
Yeah, a 40-team Super League tournament.
Absolutely, yes. It's going to happen eventually.
I'm not a fan. You're right. It is going to happen.
I'm not a fan either. Right, I just think it's going to happen.
It is going to happen.
Something like that.
I'm surprised they haven't, even if it's not pushing the small schools into that, I'm surprised they haven't already expanded it. I mean, that is the NCAA's route to more money, and because it's their tournament. So I'm surprised that hasn't already happened.
And Josh, now you've got this added because the players are going to be making more money than they've ever made before. Then you never had to give them $22 million or whatever it's going to be. Now you've got an extra incentive to say, hey, we got to go make our money, so we're going to do this. Do you think it's going to come? It doesn't have to be that plan, but do you think it's going to come to something like that, where it will be the tournament is a Super League tournament for the big boys? Sorry, Hofstra, you're out.
They also have to make back a little money that they're going to have to pay out in the House settlement. So you have that issue that they're thinking through right now. How do we make up this money that we're giving back from this settlement over the next few years? Part of me just wants to choose that some part of what we've known college athletics will remain. So I want the answer to be no, with money being the driver that we're all well aware of at this point. Then predicting it makes a ton of sense. I'll hold out hope that somebody will step in from the commissioners who are just looking out for their job is to look out for their conference, by the way.
Yeah.
The Big Ten, the SEC. But that somebody will say, no, everybody needs some kind of involvement. This is one of the great things that exists in sports today, not just college sports, that somebody will keep that alive.
But the overall payout does $1.1 billion per year. So I think what we'll see first is you'll see the SEC, ACC, Big 10, Big 12 try to get a larger piece of that pie. Like they have the college football, the 12-team college football playoff pie, because that's a whole lot more than $32 million and more than $120 million if they can somehow get $150 to $200 million per power conference school, and all the rest of the peasants just split up among themselves whatever's left.
Yeah, you got the second biggest chunk of any of the conferences. I think the ACC got $34 million because they only had 5 teams in, but they all went deep into the tournament. So they got $34 million this past year. But it's a bigger number when you look at all these conferences get a chunk of it. Whereas that's why I think that the super leagues, if you will, the Big Ten, the SEC, which are already playing footsie with each other now, you finally saw that. I think that they're going to look at it and say, well, how many graduates are there at Hofstra a year? How many graduates are there at Maryland, Baltimore County? Yeah, I think we'll be fine. I think if we do a tournament and it's just Minnesota versus Tennessee, Minnesota cranks out 50. They got 50,000 undergrad. Tennessee's got, I don't know what it is now, 30, 40, who knows. All right, you've got the numbers. So I just think eventually it's going to come to the point where they get rid of the little guy, which I hate, but I think it's coming. All right, very good. When we come back, predictions for Game 2 and a few hundred other topics. We're going to race through it, including, don't know if you've seen this, a giant, literally, coming to the SEC in basketball this year. When I say giant, I mean it. The biggest player ever, tallest ever. We'll show you his photo, tell you where he's going next. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Chris Smith Insurance. Chris can take care of his clients in more ways than most agencies can. And the reason is he's with Farmers Insurance, and he's also an independent agent, which means you get a leg up as a client. He has more ways to help you protect your home and property. If you don't fit with Farmers, he has other options for you. Visit csmithagency.com to contact Chris this week. Get in touch with him. It's an interesting situation where he can take care of you in a number of different ways, which makes him very, very special in the insurance business. csmithagency.com. Get in touch with him this week. All right, I want to hit some quickies here before we do our predictions. First, this is for Jimmy. Les Miles is suing LSU because they vacated 37 wins from 2012 to 2015 in a deal with the NCAA. He's saying that knocks him below 600 in the winning percentage, which will block him from the College Football Hall of Fame. Jimmy, would he have gotten in the Hall of Fame anyway?
I think he probably would have. You won a national championship, regardless of how good of a coach you are. you can get into the Hall of Fame. I think he would have, based on primarily the success he had at LSU. Yes.
What's interesting is there was a report that none of the schools he coached at nominated him for being included in the Hall of Fame. So you first need one of your schools to nominate you. So that's an interesting one.
There's also some of the accusations he's had. I think
Jimmy.
Zero chance.
Not you, Will. We're trying to keep it. I don't want to besmirch Les Miles.
Yes.
I'm just kidding. You're right. That's a huge part of it. All right. This is for Josh. Brent Venables just signed a new 6-year deal with Oklahoma that will pay him on average about $8.5 million a year over the next 6 years. Will that quell any worries for those Vol fans out there? Although judging by our percentages, not many of them care. Will that calm any fears that someday Venables gets fired, Oklahoma comes after their favorite son, and Heupel leaves for Oklahoma?
Now, it might ramp it up even more because now your fear is that, they'll be even more desperate if it doesn't work out for Venables, and they'll make a panic fire and
there
then
you go.
overpay to hire. So I don't see any time anywhere in the near future that Josh Heupel would go to Oklahoma. But for those who have that fear, that fear will remain and perhaps get worse.
Good deal. All right. Next, Vince. Florida has a Canadian basketball player. Let's put this thing on the screen. Florida has a Canadian basketball player coming on board this year who is 7'9". He was 6'1" at the age of 8. 6'1" at 8 years old. 7'9". You see him there standing next to a guy who is 6'2" in that photo. My question, though, is he going to dominate the SEC?
I'm going to say no. He's going to get pick and rolled a lot. So in today's college basketball game, no. I think he'll have a defensive presence, but
you don't see him being Zach Edey too.
No, I mean I think he would have to fill out, and we'd have to see him adjust, a little bit to see how he looks on this level. But my first guess is no, he'll be a role player.
It's only a 3-star player, which tells you he's really being recruited because he's 7'9". But how much skill can a 7'9" guy have?
Hate him.
Oh yeah. It's interesting that we were talking in between segments here. You would think he would have wound up at Purdue, where they keep getting those guys and they know how to use them. Florida, I don't know that that's we'll see, but I think that's an interesting fit, bringing in a 7'9" into the SEC.
Nate Oates' 5-out basketball is going to cook that kid, right? Like, he is useless in that.
Or he just won't play as much.
That's
right.
kind of my point. Yeah.
But the people who there's a time when if I'd shown you that 15, 20 years ago and said, is he going to dominate? You go, oh yeah, 7'9", the way the game's played, but it's not played that way.
Yeah.
All right, Will, start us off. Predictions, game 2. Tennessee has to win this afternoon, and let me just go ahead and get the plug in here. Road to the Ring. That's at 1:30 right here, so that's about an hour and 5 minutes away. So you might as well just sit right here, WATE. Reese Van Haften and the Six Sports team out in Omaha are going to get you ready for today's game, which comes your way right here on WATE at 2 p.m. Eastern. Vols have to win it to keep their season alive, to keep the national championship hopes alive. What happens, Will?
I think Tennessee wins. I do. I think Tennessee will hit. I think they'll be more aggressive when Tennessee. I think that A&M probably doesn't have another pitching strategy they can use against Tennessee. Also, if the strike zone is a little less liberal, I think that it's BP like it was against Evansville in that series. So I think Tennessee wins today.
Different pitchers, different approach. And I think you'll see Tennessee have a lot more success. Every game in baseball is completely different. And I think you'll see Tennessee respond really well. Plus, teams that lose game 1, I mean, they have won 7 of the College World Series in 3 games. So it's happened before.
Years.
Yeah, in 20 years.
But still, that's more than I would have thought.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I think Tennessee has a pitching advantage in this game. And if it's Lampkin versus Seacrest, Lampkin's been good. He won 2 games already in the College World Series, but he doesn't go deep. And I would still give Xander Seacrest, who has a 4-0 record, 1.23 ERA, only giving up 4 earned runs and 29 in the third innings in his last 5 starts. I would give him the advantage in a game 3 as well.
I took Vols in 3 at the start of the final series, which meant they had to split the first 2, which means they have to win today. So with any chance of being right, they will win today. So I think Tennessee will win. I think they'll slug their way through to game 2 and kind of set up a chance for one more great story of Xander Seacrest.
They left so many guys on base yesterday, and they still scored 5 runs.
Yeah.
I just think their bats are going to wake up. Thoughts?
Tennessee 7-4. How's that? You
The
want a
same
prediction?
score as the SEC tournament game against Texas A&M?
Yep, 7-4.
Okay.
That's the call.
I think they score more than 7 today. I think the offense.
Let's do a poll on that one.
Okay, let's do a poll right here. How much if the over under 7?
I'll take the over.
I will take the over, but I mean A&M can really pitch. This
See?
isn't their ace though on the mound.
Wait, I'll
so
see
maybe
in 6 hours. You know how long the game will take?
51st career start.
Yeah, that's right. Now that is an issue. I mentioned this earlier. I'm sorry. I was out of town a couple weeks ago. I was at Fenway Park. Saw a couple of games. Both of them under 3 hours. There's no reason I'm sitting there watching a 4-hour college baseball game.
No, there's not.
Take note. Watch a major league game. Take notes. Do that.
And they have a clock.
I know.
And it's still
How
there.
is it still so slow?
I-
It's
No
helped,
idea.
it's helped
Use
Major League
10
Baseball's
pitchers.
attendance big time.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So how do you have a pitching clock and it's still this slow?
Well, time, stepping out of the batter's box and
using
all
10
the pitching
pitchers, too.
visits.
So
and
that
stuff.
draws it too. All right, gentlemen, thank you all very much.
Thanks, guys.
Good luck to the Vols. Good luck to you today as you watch. I hope you have good luck today. We'll see you right back here next Sunday to talk recruiting and hopefully the Tennessee Baseball National Championship. See you then.